Hello friends, and welcome back to an exciting video on GMT, where we'll be taking a look at some of the things that are happening in the last video from the last prediction, where we saw price rally very high, as you can see here, from April 18th, from all the way until today, April 21st. We saw a big rally, as you can see here. At these levels here, we had a resistance area at about 2.6, and this level was very crucial because we saw volume just stay in that range before at these areas here. Not a lot of volume at these areas. We can see price was respecting here. We saw a recent resistance area at 2.66, where we saw price come back at these levels before coming back down. But now take a look at this. We created a level of support here at 2.3 before we saw that big rally. You can see here we were creating higher highs, lower lows, as you see here. We broke the levels here, and then our last video we talked about how there was a very heavy resistance area at 3.8, and it wasn't smart to get into the project right now at this recent resistance, and that's just one indication. We were also very oversold in the RSI. Also, another thing is that we saw a divergence here happening. So we see a divergence here. This is a tool to help me out a little bit with the divergence. So you can see here at these levels they were the same, but you could take a look here at these levels here. We can see price at these it was at 65 RSI level, and this one here was at a very oversold level at about 79. So there was a divergence, as you can see here. A divergence happened at these levels, which was another indication on top of the double top that we saw here that price was going to reverse. And also keep in mind, we saw very overextended here. Keep in mind that from April 8th until April 21st, there has to be a cool down. Okay, we are down 5% right now for the day. But just keep in mind that that had to happen. We saw here an imbalance, a big imbalance that happened. Ideally, I wanted to see price here at these levels, 3.18, for price to continue to the upside. But as of now, we can see that we are currently in a downtrend from the levels of high of 3.82 to the levels that we created at about 2.9. We can see the overall, like I stated, in a downtrend. So just keep in mind that I want to see OGN right now. We are right under the 50 MA, which is very crucial here. We saw that there was, we broke out of these levels here at the recent support areas, but I see this as a liquidity grab. Okay, so we broke the recent lows that we had before, and now coming back up to the recent levels of 50 MA. Now, depending on how we react from the 50 MA, this will be very crucial because we know that there's levels here. We have an order block at these levels where we, right now respected these levels. If we take a look here, this was the last bearish momentum that happened. So this was an order block at these levels. So we saw price react very nicely off of these levels here, because once we broke out of these levels in the downtrend, we could see that price respected these levels of order block here, and we saw a big rejection off of these support levels to the upside. But now just keep in mind, we have a recent resistance area at 3.2, and depending on how we react from this level, we could see a potential rise back to these levels here of the downtrend still at about 3.3. So hopefully we could break these levels of resistance here, since we saw a lot of wicks happening. We've tried to create a support at the recent 50 MA, but we failed to do that. So let's see how it reacts from the 50 MA and also the level of support that we had before. Depending on if we could break that level, then potentially we could retest back at the levels of support and then potentially come back to these levels of resistance now, since we are overall, as you can see from for GMT, we are overall in a downtrend. So depending on how we react from this level, if there's engulfing candles here, and if there's candles rejection, as you can see here, we saw a big candle happening here, but I want to see a rejection candle happening. So we can see here a lot of rejection happening to the bearish side. So if that happens here at these levels of recent resistance, then we can see price drop back down to the downtrend here. But ideally, I want to see price break out of these levels here, retest back at the recent resistance that we had, creating a support there at the levels of 3.43. This level will be very crucial because we see here a big supply that happened before and a big sell-up. So depending on how this price react on the double top, once this price reacts to these levels here, then ideally we could see a come back to the levels of resistance that we had at 3.8. And this level will be very crucial because we could see that price created a double bottom at these levels here, right under it at these levels at about 3.3. We see here the double bottom happening at the levels of support, which gives me another indication that is a good sign that potentially we could see price come back here, create a double bottom at these levels, since we saw it before. We could see here on the left, we saw it happen before. So ideally, it could happen again. Hopefully, it does happen again before we see another rise happening to the gaps that we saw before at 3.8. But if that doesn't happen, if price, since we are at a recent resistance area right now that was support before, we could see ideally price come back down, hopefully to the levels again at about 3, and create a double bottom here to fill in the gaps that we had at the order block, and then come back to the levels of resistance at 3.3. Just keep in mind that we want to see volume increase again. Right now, volume is increasing at these levels of support, which is a good sign. But just keep in mind, if price fails to break these levels of 50 MA, as we can see here, then price ideally can come back to the levels of another order block that we had right here at about 3.15. And depending on how price reacts off of these levels, since we will be already under the 50 MA, depending on how price will react from there, if we see a lot of candles come up, a lot of volume come up, we could test back again the 50 MA, which ideally I want to see happening. But if not, then unfortunately we could fill in another gaps that we saw here, a lot of imbalance that we saw before at about 2.6. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I want to give you all everything that I see, because I could just talk about some of the key levels that I see, but I want to give you guys every level I see ideally, so that when it comes there, you would know how price will react from there. Depending on how price reacts from these several levels here, 3 levels, it will be ideal to see if there's volume coming at these levels, or is volume decreasing. As you can see here, we saw before where we saw a lot of bearish momentum happening right away. So ideally, I want to see right now price increase, volume increase for GMT at these recent resistance areas and 50 MA, since we are under it. And depending on how that price reacts, we could test back the downtrend that we have up there. So just a quick update on GMT. I hope you guys liked it, and I hope to see you on the next one. Take care.